Welcome, everyone. I mean, you can look at the shrine and get a sense of what the talk is going to be about Ratnasambhava. It's warm, it's golden, that kind of sense of, I just want to thank Rachel, her daughter Star, Mike Javasa, and me for doing the shrine as well. I think it's really lovely. You've got two images on there. That one was painted by an old member, Vishuddhi Mati, and that one is a traditional painting of Ratnasambhava, so I'd really recommend you come up and have a look. So we had the series, the wheel, the spiral, and the goal, and we're on to the bit where we're looking at aspects of Buddhahood. And the idea of Buddhahood is so vast and so incomprehensible that over 2,500 years, the qualities of the Buddha have been kind of teased out, the qualities of enlightenment and the enlightened mind. So we can think, and what we can see in that is the imaging behind us here of all the different aspects of the enlightened mind embodied in colour and figures, such rich symbolism. And you can think of it, I don't know if anyone said this already, but it's a kind of a traditional image of, if you think of enlightenment, of light going through a prism. So the light of the Buddha going through a prism, and then what comes out of that is lots of different colours. And these are the colours. And tonight it's yellow gold colour of Ratnasambhava. And what this does is, because Buddhahood is such a big, massive thing, it allows us to, it helps us to apply the teachings in our own life in a much more accessible way. It kind of pins down the qualities so we can get specific and get accessible while still being incredibly mysterious and beautiful. So last week we had the red hot passion of Amitabha, the sunset Buddha of Amitabha. And tonight we've got the midday sun. And lately we've had a lot of that. And the kind of sun I'm talking about isn't that kind of beating down 40-degree hot sun that makes you want to run away and get in the shade. It's the warmth and openness of Ratnasambhava's sun. So yeah, the first time I came across Ratnasambhava, I was on a Brahma Vihara's retreat, and that kind of approach to practice is where you come up against all of the aspects of your life with metta, and so the first part of the retreat was all about metta, and I just didn't get it. Metta just made me angry. I was really unhappy and really lonely, and I felt like my heart was made of stone. And a few days in, I thought, oh, hang on, what it is if I feel like that, they're all going on about metta being all kind of open and spacious and lovely and warm, and I'm like, I am not being like that, because if I'm like that, where would I go? Where would I disappear to? Because I'm certainly not like that. So I was really miserable. I felt like I was in the wrong place and I'm the worst Buddhist ever. I can't do this. I want to go home. It's too hard. And I was in a meditation review group with a woman called Sanghagita, who has since died. She's a lovely, lovely, gentle Dutch order member who was very light and always had a twinkle. She always had a twinkle in her eye. And in the shrine room, we were sitting around a mandala that had all of these in. And I was sitting right opposite Ratnasambhava in the shrine room. He was right opposite me. And she said, I was telling her about how miserable I was and how I didn't feel like I could ever contact love for anyone or for myself. And she said, have you ever thought about Ratnasambhava? Because he's got more love than he knows what to do with. And it just went, bing! What she said, there was something about that sentence that just blew apart all of my kind of smallness and upsetness, and everything, at least for the time being, changed on that retreat. And I connected with, I was coming from a place of poverty, not having enough, and here was Ratnasambhava with just riches pouring out of him. And when I was writing this talk, I was sitting at a yellow table on a yellow cushion with a big bowl of lemons on the table. And I started looking around my room and I thought, God, yeah, I've actually got loads of yellow in here and gold. And that, I thought, yeah, I have I do have a relationship with yellow still. He has this gentle, beautiful smile. He sits on a yellow lotus, and he's supported by 4 horses. He's bright and open and warm like the midday sun. And he's sometimes called the Buddha of beauty. And he's how it feels when we're warm in the sun. You know, when you go on holiday somewhere warm and you start to open and you start to get warmer and you feel your bones starting to relax and you just feel like you can start to open and your heart feels a bit more open. That's how it feels being in the sun of Ratnasambhava. He wears beautiful silks and jewels, and his right hand is open in this mudra, completely open. Nothing can stick in his hand. And his left hand holds a jewel, the wish-fulfilling jewel, the Chintamani. And when you come up later, you'll see that. So this jewel, it's completely beautiful. I don't know if you've ever looked into a diamond, a proper diamond, but it's a million times more beautiful than that. It has flashes of gold of the Buddha, flashes of the blue of the Dharma, and flashes of red of the Sangha. And it has the rainbow light of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and it's sparkling and glittering and intensely beautiful and fascinating. And when you look into it, you just can't take your eyes off it. And he's holding that in his left hand here. So he's got his hand like this, and his hand like this, and in the hand is the jewel, the wish-fulfilling jewel. So his name, Ratnasambhava, means born of the jewel, or jewel-producing one. And there's so much symbolism in Ratnasambhava, where to start, and I've got 35 minutes timed within an inch of its life. So I'm hoping to finish on 35 minutes. You could study and work with Ratnasambhava for a whole lifetime. And some people who do, obviously, that's their thing. If he sounds like he might be your thing, you can look in these books. If you've got that one, Meeting the Buddhas, there's a very detailed description that Vasantra gives of Ratnasambhava in there. And there's a more concise description in here. This is the mandala of the 5 Buddhas by Vasantra, and this is the original Meeting the Buddhas. You might be interested in him, he's in there. So I'm just going to look at some aspects, particularly looking at the supreme giving, the generosity of Ratnasambhava. And I'm going to start with his mantra. And of all of them, Ratnasambhava's mantra is kind of the most evocative of his being, because it's so cheerful and jolly. It's Ratnasambhava Trang, so it's kind of Tram with a dot underneath it makes it go And the Trang seed syllable just sums up Ratnasambhava. It's Ratnasambhava in essence. So it goes like this, it goes. So I'm going to sing it a couple of times for you, because later on before the meditation, we're going to be chanting it. So it goes, Om Ratnasambhava Trang, Om Ratnasambhava Trang, Om Ratnasambhava Trang, Om Ratnasambhava Trang, isn't it? So cheerful and jolly. And when we do it as a big group, we do it in twos. So Prani Hridaya, my beautiful assistant, is just going to pop up quickly and do what we do. So it goes. Oh, I do want the image up, yes. So it goes, Om Ratnasambhava Trang, Om Ratnasambhava Trang, Om Ratnasambhava Trang, Om Ratnasambhava Trang. So, thank you, beautiful. So later on what we'll do when we do the meditation is we'll begin that, and then Prani Hridaya and I will do that little extra bit. So all you have to worry about is doing the Om Ratnasambhava Trang in your one. It will be fine. So here he is. Wow. Here he is. Yellow, gold. This is, you might have had this already as a postcard on the intro course. This yellow gold it's full of energy and intensity and abundance of life. And we're drawn to warmth, aren't we? We're drawn to warmth. And we're drawn to the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha through him. And it's said that that's what is kind of given from his hand. And it's also present in the Chintamani. So this image, that it's like we turn to this like sunflowers to the sun. When we gaze at him, something opens up in us. And that's why in his realm, everyone is relaxed. In Ratnasambhava's realm, everyone is relaxed. They're just having a great time. They have everything that they need. They have more than they need. There's no rush. There's no conflict. There's no rush to go anywhere or get anything because there's nothing to get because they've already got it. So that's why in Ratnasambhava's realm, the arts and culture flourishes. And Ratnasambhava is also known as the Buddha of the arts. He is the patron of writers and musicians and artists. Everyone flourishes in his realm under the warm sun of Ratnasambhava. And the crops ripen, the earth is fertile, and no one lacks anything. And that's why Vajragita said to me, have you thought about Ratnasambhava? Because I was coming from such an empty lack place, such a place of lack and poverty. She said, look at Ratnasambhava because he's got more love than he knows what to do with. And I'd lost sight of that truth that we learn on the intro course, that happiness comes from inside. And I was feeling that lack of being loved and being able to love. And I remembered that ideal, that the love that we, in the fifth stage of the Metabhavana, love for all beings. Well, I was leaving myself out. And I needed to learn to include myself, to give myself that love just the same as I would aspire to give everybody in the fifth stage. So I sat in front of him and I started to feel the warmth of his sun-like being, and something started to shift. And I thought, after a meditation, I wanted something from the garden to put in on the shrine. So I went out into the garden looking for a flower that would be perfect for Ratnasambhava, and there were these massive daisies, in the garden, like a bit like these ones, but even bigger in the garden at Taraloka. So I ran to get one and cut one off and went to put it on the shrine. And when I turned it, it was double-headed. It was like when you turned it both ways, it looked the same. It was a flower that had two heads on it, and it was like Ratnasambhava had said, you want a daisy? Have two. He just had, so it was just a miracle, and I was just laughing, and I thought it was so hilarious that Ratnasambhava had given me this daisy that was more than I needed. He has more love than he knows what to do with. So this abundance is this abundance and no boundaries. This is linked to his wisdom. So his wisdom is the wisdom of equality, the wisdom of sameness. And the sun, because his sun shines equally on everything and everyone, Ratnasambhava embodies this wisdom of sameness, this wisdom of equality. And the idea is about that the sun pours down infinite riches upon everything and everyone. Whatever your social position or race or sex or even life form. Vasantra says, the golden sunlight of Ratnasambhava shines equally on the palace and the dung heap. So he transforms that poison of pride or conceit. So, this thing about being the same. So his, just to explain this idea before we go back to the wisdom of sameness, it's all linked in. We can think of conceit as being a particular, in our language, we perhaps think of conceit as being big-headedness. Well, actually in Buddhism, it has a very particular description. Do you want to close it properly? Is it getting on your nerves? Conceit is about the idea that we could ever be better than, or worse than, or even the same as anyone else. So that's really interesting, isn't it? It just doesn't make sense for Ratnasambhava or anyone in his realm to think of any kind of comparison, of being better than, worse than, or the same as, because of the sun that shines equally on everybody, and everybody has that the same. So he's associated with the human realm in the wheel of life. And in the human realm in the wheel of life, there's cooperation. There's receiving help and rejoicing and giving to ourselves and others. And it doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter who's giving. It doesn't matter who's receiving. We don't have to compare ourselves, because this wisdom sees the sameness in us, that we all have potential for Buddhahood. We all have Ratnasambhava's sun shining on us. So it doesn't make sense to compare. It doesn't make sense to think of people as being different in that particular way. So it doesn't, because Ratnasambhava has gone beyond comparison. And he's coming from a deep solidarity with all that lives. There's no separation, no isolation. It doesn't make sense for Ratnasambhava, when you see the flow of the universe, that to be separate from Ratnasambhava doesn't make sense. Isolation, comparison has no place, because the light of Ratnasambhava shines on everybody equally. So what is he shining on us? Well, he's shining the riches of the spiritual qualities of love and wisdom, total acceptance, kindness, faith, truth, contentment, inspiration. So no matter how spiritually poor you feel, his abundance of everything gives you everything you need to attain enlightenment. So we can reflect on this realm. So it's not like, oh, brilliant, let's all live in this fantasy land where we can escape from dukkha, where we can go and live in this place where everyone has everything that they need. It's not where we can all escape from dukkha and difficulty. The world that we live in is hard to live in. And we have to face real suffering. We have to face our own suffering and the suffering of others. But if we can meet that suffering and the suffering of others from this place of abundance, then we can be much more help. And we can cultivate real compassion, and we can act much more effectively in the world, whatever we encounter, if we're coming from this place of abundance. And this aspect of the wisdom of sameness means that whatever worldly wind we're buffeted by, gain or loss or pleasure or pain or fame or notoriety, whatever we're buffeted by, then we're able to meet that from a place of metta, from a place of steadiness and abundance and wealth. So we're able to meet joy with mudita and rejoicing in joy, and we're able to meet suffering with compassion. And so we're able to be steady no matter what comes up against us, because we have enough. We have more than enough. We're not going to be blown over. So his mudra shows the supreme giving, and it also shows that it's impossible to hold on to anything, even a sense of separation. So there's no sense of me, there's no sense of you, or even of a gift being given. There's just flow and change with no sense of loss or gain, coming from the infinite abundance of the enlightened mind. So among the various traditions of Buddhism, there is one that has generosity, the supreme giving of Ratnasambhava, as the first and the most important practice. And this list is called the Paramitas, or perfections. And it's a list that is a kind of a collection of the qualities of the Buddha that we can practice so that we can become better at them. So they include, as well as generosity coming first, there's ethics, energy, patience, meditation, and wisdom. But Sanghagita says that Dharma, this list has generosity as the first one and the most important one, because generosity is a fundamental Buddhist virtue. And it's first of all, we have to learn to be generous. Before we can do anything else, we have to learn to be generous. And so that is really something to think about, isn't it? You'd think it'd be kindness, But actually, in this particular tradition, generosity comes first. And why should that be? Why should that be? It's really interesting, isn't it? So to be able to get to the bottom of that, we need to understand the basic problem that we're all in, the basic mistake that we all make because we're human beings. That out of ignorance, not our fault, based on our actions and based on our past actions and based on the thing, our wiring, we don't see reality as it really is. We see our world around us and we think we're separate. We think we're isolated and we're in competition. So we're wired to be scanning for threat and to pull towards us things that ease and comfort that sense of threat and to push away things that make that threat feel worse. It's just part of the way we are as unenlightened human beings. It's just the way things are. Until we see the truth of things, which is that we're deeply and profoundly connected, that there is no actual separation. But whilst we're here, this is the way we see the world, and we have to just acknowledge that and practice with that. And part of that delusion, part of that ignorance, is to build and protect a really strong sense of me. And it's necessary to function in the world. We really have to have, it's very healthy to have a strong, confident sense of self. And that's a good thing. But what happens is, without realizing it, we start to accumulate and stick on things that shore up that sense of me, so that in the end, there's a kind of a sense that we feel like we can't function without these things. So things like possessions, things like status, other people, experiences. And because it was all based on a big mistake in the first place, we always have this idea that the next thing will work, the next possession will work, the next new house, the next new job, the next new boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, friend, the next chocolate, the next thing on telly will be the thing that will make us feel better. But of course, it never works. And so we're in a constant state of stress, trying to make all these things work. And then what we have to do is keep those things. And then we're in a fear of losing those things. And that makes us mean and stingy, and that closes up our hand. It makes things mine, and they make things yours, and they make things that increases our sense of separation. So Ratnasambhava sees, experiences, because he's enlightened, he sees the world with no separation. I mean, obviously, I don't know that, but I believe that that is the case, that is his experience, as a flow of arisings and ceasings, where the only response to that is love. The only response to that is metta. So there's no separation that makes anything mine. And of course, we don't see things like that. So what we have to do in the meantime is practice what will help us to see that, which is practice generosity. Because when you've got an open hand, the separation between me and you becomes broken a little bit more. What's mine is yours. You can't always think what's yours is mine, of course. It doesn't work the other way around. But we act as if we did see the world like that, and we practice and get better at seeing the world like that. So that is why generosity is a wisdom practice. That's why generosity helps us to see that there is no separation between me and not me. By practicing giving away, by practicing the lack of separation between me and my possessions and somebody else, me and not me. So we practice this through generosity, and we break down this sense of me and mine and you and yours. And slowly, gradually, we begin to develop the wisdom of that we see that that's just a mistake. That what's mine, there isn't a me to have a mine, and there isn't a you to have yours. But of course, there is that we're coming from a place where we don't see the world like that. So we have to practice it. And I would suggest we have a little go and practice that. There never was. We're living in this delusion And we've built it up all ourselves. There never was a separation. But because we see the world like that, generosity can help us to break that down. So the trick is, of course, that there isn't anything lost, because Ratnasambhava has more of everything than he knows what to do with. The open hand of Ratnasambhava says, no, it all has to go. It just all has to go. And when we see that, we're actually looking for in those possessions, in those ideas, in the people and experience, is actually underneath all of that. What we're actually looking for is connection. And then we can see that actually that those things aren't going to help us, that we can look underneath all of that to the wisdom of the son of Ratnasambhava, and perhaps connecting with the connection that we're all longing for in the first place. So how do we practice the supreme giving of Ratnasambhava? Well, there is a traditional list, and we'll get onto that, but I was thinking before I get onto the list, there's a couple of things that I think have helped me. So the practice of generosity, how do we do it? One way is to reflect that we live in this vast network of life, continuously the recipients of the generosity of others. I think that's a really good thing to remember, that we are enriched by the riches of others. A gratitude practice that acknowledges that everything that we have and everything that we are, we've received from others. And we could, lots of people have a gratitude practice. Lots of people do that already. But we could perhaps take that on. We don't have to feel. We don't have to feel all warm and fuzzy. We just have to notice. It's more of a cognitive thing, really. It's more that we register and we acknowledge that we have been the recipients of somebody else's gifts, whatever that might be. And especially what led us to the Dharma, especially clocking what it was that led us to the Dharma. I think that is a really good place to start. We could think about a possession that we really, really love and reflect on who or what was involved in creating it and you're receiving it. Because the open hand isn't just about, it's the flow. It's receiving and giving. There's nothing held back. So it's also about rejoicing. And we can rejoice in the merits of others. When we see how much we've received, then that we're in the sun of Ratnasambhava that will help us to open our hand. We can acknowledge that our very lives depend on what others have given us, the actions and the thoughts of other people. And then we can also reflect on our own generosity. And remember a few weeks ago that Vidanya, in a talk he gave, he said that he gave a story, I can never remember her name, begins with a V. Amogavamsa, who is it? You gave a talk on it once. Who? Yeah. That, whatever, I couldn't quite catch it, but that reminds me, it's a woman, so it's the Buddha gave a teaching that said, a really good way to get off the wheel of life and onto the spiral, which will lead directly to enlightenment, is to begin by reflecting on your own generosity. And so I think a really good way to start is you begin your meditation with that. It might have been a long time ago, it might have been a week ago, it might have been that day. When were you generous, and how did it feel to be generous? What effect did it have? You could even write about it, really acknowledge it, clock it, and notice the effect that it had. Just the fact that you are practicing the Dharma will have an effect in the world, and you can reflect on the fact that you're doing that, reflecting on the generosity of that. I think allowing people to thank you and allowing people to rejoice in you, don't bat off a compliment. Again, Amogavamsa always says, thank you for noticing. And that's a really good thing to do. Somebody says something lovely about you, you can just say thank you. Or if it's appropriate, thank you for noticing. So it's allowing generosity in so that generosity can come out. So it's a flow. You're opening to the sun of Ratnasambhava so it can come in and so it can come out. So there's a traditional list, and it begins with giving of material things. This is very straightforward, isn't it? When my kids were little, there was no such thing as food banks. They didn't exist. No such thing. And now they're all over the place. We can consider that. We know this. I don't need to spend any time on this. Charities, standing order to the centre. But really it's getting into a habit, isn't it? Getting into a habit of giving. So that the habit of giving tells our system that it's okay to give. That it tells our system, when we get into the habit of it, it kind of reinforces in our brains that it's okay to give, we've got enough. We've got enough. And this is actually personally my hardest thing. My hardest thing is giving financially. Because I was brought up, my parents had no money, and there was always that fear in the house, I could feel it, that we'd run out. And my mum was amazing, she was amazing, and we always had good food, but there was always in the air, Friday was a difficult day because that was my dad's payday. And she used to call it Ballyan Day. Don't know why, but that meant no money day. So I always have a little bit of a tussle about money. Other things, no problem. But that is the thing so it might be worth having a think about where do I have to stretch a little bit? Where do I really have to work with this? You'll have your own particular area where your hand is a little bit closed. And, or you might not, it might be amazingly in all areas. But if you do, it's worth looking for. So habits, we could move to buying a little, if we can afford it, move to buying more ecologically sustainable things. Just an idea. So number 2, material things, number 1. Number 2, fearlessness. Giving the gift of fearlessness by example. Amoga Siddhi's mudra is like this. And it's interesting that, so Amoga Siddhi is fearless, and Ratnasambhava is like that. Isn't that interesting? It's almost the same, but it's like fearless, and I think you sometimes do have to be fearless to give, that you're going to have enough. But also, it's like the outward action of the world. Ratnasambhava and Amoga Siddhi are kind of paired because they represent the outward action. Like Shobhya and Amitabha are more the inward action, and those two are twinned in that. So it's worth thinking about. If you have a connection with Amoga Siddhi, might it be interesting to think about where the connection might be there? If you give encouragement to someone, you're giving the gift of fearlessness. But then are they going to leave you behind if they don't need you anymore? Are they going to get better at you at that thing? It's so complicated, all of this, isn't it? Look and see what happens when you encourage people, when you give that gift of fearlessness. I remember my little Gina when we were camping when the kids were little. And it was in the middle of a storm, and the wind was blowing and her hair was blowing everywhere, and the rain was pouring down and everything was flying everywhere, and she was holding onto the tent pole and she said, "Mom, are we scared?" And I said, "No, we're not scared." "Okay." And it's that, we can give that gift. 3, education and culture. So education and culture is 3rd on the traditional list of what we can give. Can we, and not to forget that Ratnasambhava is the patron of culture, can we offer our expertise to help in areas where people don't have access to art and culture? Is that a possibility? Can we teach people to read, to appreciate art? And if we've done this with our own children and with our own families, and if we're in the middle of this, appreciating that and reflecting on the generosity of that, art and culture opens our heart and mind. And sometimes that's needed before we can even begin to approach a spiritual life. Maybe that's something. Do we need to open up to the gift of culture, or be grateful that we have been? My mum taught us all to read before we went to school. That's massive. So it's reflecting on that and feeling the gratitude of that. Number 4, the giving of life and limb. Unlikely that that would be necessary, but who knows in this day and age? Could we? But we can interpret it in different ways. Time and energy. Can we give time and energy? Give blood, give organs. Can we give ourselves wholeheartedly to a project? Sangha Night, works days. Can we perhaps volunteer here? Can we give away a fixed idea? Can we, to me, it's like giving away that idea that someone is fixed, that the person that we put in the difficult stage, instead of turning away from them, can we give them? Can we give ourselves to them? That difficult person that you just want to do that to? Can we go and turn ourselves to that person and give our body to that person, giving of life and limb? Number 5, merits. Giving on merits. There's this idea, in the puja, may the merit gained in my acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. You might have heard that in the puja. It's this idea that when we practice skillful action, then we have we accumulate the benefit of that in our karmic stream. And it's the idea that we could actually give that away and start all over again. It doesn't actually work like that, and I think, but it's more an approach to our practice. By saying it aloud, that we can give away the merit that we've gained by practicing skillful actions, by practicing generosity. It's more an approach to practice rather than an actual thing. I don't really know whether it is a thing that we could even do. Maybe it's possible, I don't know. But the point of it is that it's an approach to life, to practice, so we're not just doing it for ourselves. That as we practice, we keep in mind that we're doing it for all beings, for everybody to come along with us. And by saying it aloud and having that witnessed in the puja, maybe it could work, maybe it could be helpful. For the sake of all beings, we keep practicing through many lifetimes until all beings are enlightened. And this is the bodhisattva ideal. And of course, the trick is that by giving away all your merit, you get loads more. So you don't actually have to worry about starting all over again, because once you've given away all your merit, the merit fairies say, I'll have some more. I don't think it actually works like that, but it's just more of an approach. But if we can think about giving it away and knowing that we are abundant with merit, we've got more merit than we know what to do with. It's more that idea that we're full of merit and we're just happy to give it away. And the last one on the list is the greatest gift of all, which is the gift of the Dharma. So you can, I'm giving a talk, which is a gift. You can volunteer at the centre, remembering, of course, that the Ratnasambhava's right hand is giving the gift of the 3 jewels. So we're trying to kind of live in that realm. And we can volunteer on an intro course. There are many intro courses coming, be it to be on the wider team, to be a friendly face that supports the team on an intro course is incredibly helpful. It might be that that's something that you might like to do. To live a good, honest Dharma life through all of the ups and downs, and people see you change, that's a great gift to give someone. Meeting up with a friend, talking about the Dharma, lend someone a book, listening to someone. Sometimes when you really, really listen to someone, it helps them access something within themselves, that then they have that gift that they wouldn't have had if you hadn't listened to them. So it's not necessarily going and giving people advice, in fact, it's not that. Actually listening to someone can open up something in that person. So yes, got to stop. Right, finished, almost finished. Finish in a minute. So it's just as if all these generous actions and thoughts polish up your jewel. It's like you polish up your jewel in your left hand. So imagine you've got your jewel here, this beautiful jewel. And your right hand, when your jewel is all nicely polished up, your right hand is wide open, can't hold anything back. And when we're a bit mean and stingy, it's like the light gets a bit dim and our hand closes. And so, maybe we just have a practice this week, a little bit of homework, polishing up our jewel. And it works both ways. So the more open your hand is, the brighter your jewel. The brighter your jewel, the more open your hand is. And practices just go completely flowing through the jewel, through your hand. And it's just like a wee open practice of Ratnasambhava. That's me. So the talk questions might be something like, where are your squeaky areas? Where do you find it very easy to be generous? And where is it more tricky? Where do you need more of Ratnasambhava's abundant wealth to be able to enter, to step into those tricky areas? But also remembering the practice of reflecting on your own generosity. So both in the groups. If you want to do that, that could be something that you think about.